Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to, well, good morning, good day, good evening. I guess it really depends on when you're tuning in. Welcome to episode 12 of Mental Hellness. Super excited to be chatting with Brune Smith today. Brune is actually originally from Paris, but now calls Toronto home. She is the founder and host of Bodies of Stories, which is an international true storytelling show hosted online since the before times. And this is an amazing show, and it's wonderful and warm and inclusive. And I can say this because I have participated in it, and she's a wonderful host. She's also an empowerer, what a great word, and nurturer of existing and future storytelling producers who wish to create their own memorable virtual show and find their crowd or find their people. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to get to chat with Brune today. So let me just admit her. There she is. I see her
Oh.
face. Hello.
Hi. Oh, look at that.
Look, this is so great. I know you've probably, hi Brune, you've probably seen in the Facebook group of all my technical foibles with doing this show. And this was actually really smooth today. So yay us.
Hey. Okay, let me get rid of that
I like that. What is that? Lemon?
exotic shirt.
Lemons?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
There we go.
So wonderful. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of technical difficulties, and one of the things that I've been learning doing the show and talking about mental hellness, a big part of it is my anxiety. And even though I've done this a few times now, I find that about 10 minutes or so just before we're supposed to log on, I get the huge chest tightening, I get the butterflies, and I feel like it's just going to flop. You know, it's like, why can't anxiety make us hyper positive? It makes me hyper negative. What about you? How do you feel about that?
Oh, man. Same. I have the chest tightening. I just had it.
You see, right.
But I know now that it vanishes the second it starts.
Yeah. How do you feel
And
right
then
now?
it's just, I feel great. I'm very happy to see you. And yeah, now it's just us chatting, and it's now we are in. So,
Yeah, it's like, it's just all those little, you know, we tend to, when you have an anxious mind, and I've talked about this a bunch over the last few episodes, and just in general in life, when you deal with anxiety on a daily basis, we just are constantly thinking about all of the things that not only could go wrong, but probably will go wrong. And that's kind of where we put our energy. So it's almost like this huge just weight comes off your chest when everything just kind of smooths out. So
oh man,
it.
yeah.
And you've got that. So I was saying in the intro, I was talking about your virtual storytelling show, beautiful Bodies of Stories, and how you have been doing this online thing since before the craziness of the pandemic. What made you decide to go online with this, even before we kind of had to?
Yeah. The first show was in January. And what made me decide is that last year in the summer, I facilitated a storytelling workshop on Zoom, and I created it on Zoom because I wanted to give access to live storytelling to people who didn't necessarily live in cities where there are storytelling shows, or countries. Like, France doesn't have storytelling shows, and but also other places. And so it was over a few weeks. And then at the end of a storytelling workshop, you do a showcase. And so I was like, we have to have a showcase, but like, it's not going to be the same as in person. And I don't have a choice. So I'm going to do it on Zoom. So I told the students, invite your family and friends, and we're going to do it. And so we did the showcase. We were, I think, 16 people on the call.
Nice.
And there were people from Nebraska, from Chicago, from Quebec, Ontario, the UK, France. And so different time zones, different lightings, like the sun was in a different place. And everyone had their video on because they were family and friends. And so they were like, oh, cool, like let's hang out together.
Right.
And I was really surprised that emotions absolutely came through and everyone was really moved or like laughing hysterically and just seemed to have a great time. And I had a great time.
Right.
And then a few weeks later, I was like, oh, like I enjoyed teaching, but what I loved most was working one-on-one with each student on their story and actually doing the showcase. Right. And so I thought, oh, what if I could just do that? Like I would do a monthly show, a storytelling show on Zoom. And then I was like, no, it's not a thing. And so I forgot about it. I mean, I tried to forget about it. I was like, no, like this is silly. And then a week later, the idea comes back and I'm like, okay, if you think it's so great, just do it.
Oh, wow.
Because at the same time, too, I had listened to an interview of Elizabeth Gilbert about her book, Big Magic, which I haven't read.
I love that book. I love it. It's great. Read it. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
In it, she mentions that ideas, are sent to us.
Yep.
And if we don't implement them, they're going to keep traveling.
Yep. Somebody else will.
Yeah, somebody else will. And I have to admit, there was part of me, like I thought about that and I was like, if someone else does it, I'm going to be so pissed that I didn't do it.
Of course.
My ego.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And so I had to sort of educate people, like just tell people what it was because the format didn't exist yet that I knew of. Entertainment on Zoom. And so I think I created the Instagram account in October and I started saying like filming myself, okay, so this is what it is, and send me your story and we'll get together on Zoom. And so the first show was in January, and of course, like when you start a storytelling show, you just reach out to people who you think might be interested, and then now I receive pitches from people who I don't know. But yeah,
that's so exciting. That really you start to see success, when what you originally intended starts to just sort of spread and it goes word of mouth and people really think that you're onto something special. And this is a great example of feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
This, it really is. I mean, how does that jive with, and I'm not sure, do you suffer from regular anxiety or depression or any kind of mental illness that way that you have to battle?
Yeah, like I've had years of depression at different stages in my life. Like starting when I was a kid, and then when I was a teenager, and then in my 20s, and every time it was like for several years.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I would say I'm an anxious person for sure. But then I would say, I think I sort of got rid of like the long-lasting depression a few years ago. I think 2014. And I have to say, like these last few weeks, it's catching up a bit. Like I feel this deep thing that I know so well because I've lived it before for long periods of time.
Right.
And so it feels so familiar, hence comfortable in a way. Like, oh, I know that place. It's sort of cozy. Why don't I stay there?
That is a really different way of looking at it. And I think most people, maybe they can't put words to it, but you've probably hit something familiar for a lot of people, because I know for me, when depression creeps up, it can be like sinking into a comfortable chair.
Yeah.
And even though the logical part of your brain, that's maybe muffled, because I always sort of, that's how I picture it, is that my voice that's telling me to get off my ass and to do things is muffled through the depression. Um, you're really doing battle with yourself, because you know that you should, there's that word should, but you should move, you should do, you should,
Yeah.
snap out of it, whatever it is. But it's such a comfortable place to be sometimes.
Yeah. Like, it's like in that place, we know how to be.
Yeah. Oh, you know how to be. So what's that like for you?
Um, oh, so hard to describe. I think maybe like, I think what has triggered it is the isolation.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
And so, it's, I think it's a strong, like a deep feeling of, I am the last person on earth. And,
Yes.
and, and so that's also why it's easy to stay in it,
Mhm.
because there's no one around. Like, I mean, I do live with someone, and that's very lucky, but I don't know.
No, I think you're nailing it. I can relate to everything you're saying, is that this has been unprecedented times. So it's almost, I think the pandemic is almost custom made for people who deal with depression because it almost gives, sadly, everyone a taste of what it can feel like, because mental illness, whatever you happen to be dealing with, I find, and it's very common that it is very isolating in and of itself. So with the pandemic being forced, you're almost forced into this state of mind. And
Yeah.
if you're not used to it, it can be a pretty scary place to be,
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know?
I think, yeah, I think what has helped me over the last few years was definitely, I mean, it was different things, but especially since I moved to Toronto 2 years ago,
Mhm.
the storytelling community, and this place, those places where you can just show up and be yourself, like
Mhm.
exactly yourself with your exact story and history.
Mhm.
It's like, I was thinking about this morning, where it's like the place where misfits fit.
Yes.
I don't know. I was thinking about this book by Lydia Yuknovich. It's called the Misfits Manifesto,
Love it.
and it's wonderful. Like, even the title, you're like, okay, I
Yeah,
want to read it.
totally.
Yeah. Um, but I think I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so hanging out with people in places where it's okay to tell your story and be exactly who you are,
Mhm.
it's the best thing. And then I haven't done my show in 2 months. And I think doing my show was very helpful during the first few months of the pandemic, just
Mhm.
in terms of like mental health, because you told the story on my show,
Yeah.
and so it's talking to people one on one, and people who you don't necessarily know, and talking to them in a way that's often like pretty quickly intimate because of the nature of their story.
And I love that too. I mean, I again completely relate to what you're saying about, there's something very freeing. I've always been very open with my mental health. And when it's like that feeling on your chest again, when you let go of something, when you are in an environment where you're not the only one that's sharing something, deep and intimate. And there is such a feeling of almost instant camaraderie. And there's
Yeah.
a feeling of safety,
Mm-hmm.
which I think, for a lot of us, when we're dealing with depression or anxiety or whatever, mental health issue it might be, um, there's that feeling of being scared and looking for safety. So where can I feel safe and secure? And
Yeah.
one of the fringe benefits to storytelling, or any sort of creative outlet, as far as I'm concerned, is it can provide that sense of safety, because we are able to just be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You provide a service. Do you look at it that way at all?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think it's behind why I do it is because I want to give other people that opportunity to be in that space and feel better.
And
You
you're
know?
and and when you and I workshopped my story, which I told and I mentioned in my intro of you that I did get to participate in your show, which was wonderful. Um, Even those one-on-one workshopping become sort of a de facto counseling session. Right? Because
Yeah.
right? Because you're unpacking your story and you're having some fun with it, but then you're also looking at it through somebody else's eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
it can change sort of the trajectory of how you're going to tell that story. And not only that, I find that with storytelling shows, you make friends very quickly, probably because it's intimate
Yeah.
so quickly.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like a few weeks ago, I had like a Zoom call with two new friends I made through my show.
Mm-hmm.
They are both in Florida, but like I hung out with them. Like I spent 1 hour on Zoom with each one of them, um, just to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even do that with my friends like in France. Like we use WhatsApp but yeah, I definitely made friends and connections that it's people like I know I can trust,
Right.
storytellers and producers, and it's so great. It's so great. Like I think it's this instant trust that is built when you're being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
It creates like it just when someone lets you in, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I think I can trust you. So
Yeah, and it's really powerful, and it's I think it's sort of in this sort of environment, it dispenses with all the I don't know about you, but I hate small talk.
yeah, I can't do it.
And I'm
Uh,
always so impressed by people who can do it. And I think it
yeah,
is a skill, and maybe you and I should learn how to do it, because I think we
yeah,
might get along better in the world if we did. But I tend to, even if I'm standing in line at the grocery store, I'd rather like, say to the person in front of me, tell me about your first job and how that felt, or tell me, when was a time in your life when you were most vulnerable, instead of just talking about the weather or
yeah, yeah.
the pandemic. God, that's all we seem to talk about right now.
I know. Uh, yeah. Um,
It's like there's got to
it's
be.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's catching up with me because, like I said, like the first few months of the pandemic, I was just like, I was almost thriving because I'm an introvert. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, just by myself at home, it sounds wonderful.
Yep.
And now it's like catching up, and I'm like, oh no, this sucks.
It.
Yeah,
I feel the same way. I think I have no problem being on my own. I enjoy my own company.
yeah,
It's just, I think that's part of being an introvert. Um, but I've said this a couple of times on this show, and I'll say it again. There is something wholly different when you want to be by yourself and when you're told you have to be by yourself.
oh my God, yeah,
Because suddenly, wait a minute, you're taking something away from me. And I was just saying to someone the other day, I really want to go to a party. I don't want to go to a party really, but I want to know that I could go
yeah,
to
yeah,
a party.
exactly,
Right?
yeah. Having restrictions that are imposed by something like other than yourself is like it sucks, man. It's like
Yeah.
um it's almost like house arrest, and I don't want to be insensitive to people who have lived through that,
Mm-hmm.
but when I think like me not having lived that situation, when I think of it, it's like, yeah, I feel like that's what it is when where someone is telling me, no, you can't do that, and you can't do that, and you can't do that, and especially things that are good for the soul, like seeing people.
Mm-hmm.
that's so tough.
Yeah. Do you find though, sort of along that vein of thought, are you talking more to people than you would have been talking to them had there been no pandemic? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you like, for me, I'm Zooming with people that I hadn't talked to in probably a couple of years, but suddenly I'm clamoring for that kind of connection. I wonder if you've been
Mm,
doing that.
I think so. That's interesting. Um, like this, yeah, I just reached out to someone I haven't talked to in years.
Yeah.
And even like people in Toronto in the storytelling community who maybe I wouldn't go hang out with, or just because I'm shy sometimes, or just
Yeah.
because I like being by myself.
And it's an effort.
um,
It's an effort to go places sometimes for that purpose, right?
oh, yeah, yeah.
And
And
go ahead.
so I always saw it like as an effort that like had so many benefits, so I would do it. And
Yeah.
now that I can't do it, I'm like, I wish I could like put in that effort.
And it's true. And I think so many of us are, because we're kind of at our wits' end. It's, we're under all of these restrictions. We can't do things that say we ordinarily might do or might think to do, even if we didn't do them before. And it's a really interesting point in time for mental health, because I think if you've never ever experienced a mental health issue, you have right now, right? People are
Yeah,
experiencing what it's like right now to some degree, whether it's anxiety or daily stress or that depression. And in a selfish way, as somebody who advocates for busting stigma around mental health, it's kind of beneficial that people are getting this glimpse into it, because it really is generating good conversation.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like,
When did you start this chat show?
I
Yeah.
started the
Oh, can you
chat.
hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry, my internet is bad. Yeah.
Oh, nope, that's okay. Um, well, I started this for completely selfish reasons, because I wanted to have conversations like this. I wanted to find out how other people were not just coping, but what their views on mental illness, and that's why I call it mental hellness, because I think
Yeah.
sometimes we can poke fun with it, and we can kind of look at um, the lighter side, I guess, to a certain extent, the silly side sometimes in some of the conversations I've had. So I started this at the beginning of July, I guess. And
Okay. Yeah.
I was really interested to see how many people wanted to do it. Because when I first tossed out the idea, I thought, nobody's going to want to do this. Nobody's going to want to chat about their mental health, blah, blah, blah. Um, and it's amazing when you give people the platform and the opportunity to chat about it a little bit. And everybody that's been on has a slightly different take. So it's been
Mm,
really um, a real gift for me. And I've
yeah.
selfishly gotten to take so much out of this, is hearing other people's perspective on this thing we call mental health.
Yeah. Well, I think you say it's selfish, but I think we should always follow what we are curious about. And when we do that and we bring it out like in front of people, it's actually usually pretty interesting to other people, uh,
Yeah.
even if it's just like 10 people, but
Yeah.
they're going to love it.
And that's,
So I think, yeah.
do you find that, like, with storytelling, because I know one of the things that you advocate for is you love first time storytellers,
Yeah.
right? You'd like to see that. And I think the same thing about storytelling. When you go to a storytelling show and perhaps it's never even crossed your mind to do it, but suddenly you're hearing other people do it and you think, I need some of that. I want to feel that vulnerable, or I want to get feedback from people about, parts of my life that maybe I'm trying to process. So I
Yeah.
think it does the same thing. I really honestly believe that what you're doing is a service for people. It's,
Mm.
you know, not only are they tapping into their stories, but for some they're tapping into a talent, because there are better storytellers
Yeah.
than others. I mean, that's just, you know, that's just the
Yeah.
nature of it. But how do you find it when a first time storyteller tells a story and they do really well? How does that make you feel?
Oh my God, it's so satisfying. It's so rewarding. It's so wonderful to see someone discover their own ability to articulate things for themselves and for other people, and to realize they have a voice, that it's not just ideas that are neutral. Like when they're spoken, of course, like they're going to use certain words, certain phrases, and even a tone of voice, or
Mm-hmm.
it's super satisfying. And I think one of the reasons why I do it too, and why I love first time storytellers, is just that my first time was so transformational. Is that a word?
Transformation,
Uh,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. And so I want that for everyone. It was so, I don't know.
It's a high. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's a real high, and I know what you're saying. One of the things that I get to volunteer to do is um, teach people how to tell their mental health story. So a
Mm.
lot of times when people are dealing with mental health issues, a lot of times their stories are told for them. So one of the things that I
Right.
do in a workshop is help people to find their own voice, to tell their mental health story in their own way. And
Yeah.
exactly like you said, it's transformational for people to realize that there is value in what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that even if only one person in the audience, whether it's a virtual audience or a real audience, even if one person connects to that, it's so incredibly worthwhile, and it's satisfying for
Yeah.
the teller as well as those of us who help the teller to get up there on stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
It's Yeah, and it's so validating at a place where, if we talk about mental health stories, at a place where usually either those things are not talked about, or we feel very separate
Yes.
from everyone else.
Yes.
Um, and then, yeah, I think the show is also a service to, of course, the audience,
Yeah.
uh, for people to see their stories reflected back to them, or bits of stories, and also to have a good time, because it's still entertainment, and
Yes.
you know, it's not all. I mean, for my show, I try to have a balance of stories to, you know, for the audience to catch a break here and there, and
Well, because
like
it
have a
can
good
be
time.
tiring, right? It can be tiring.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way. This is why it's so good that your show is curated, because then you are able to look at the balance, right? And see, okay,
Yeah.
so we've got a little bit of heavy here, we're going to have lighter fare here, we're going to balance this out. And you take that way, you're really taking the audience on a fully rounded ride. Really, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I found with your show anyway. um,
Oh, great.
and
Cool.
I think that you nailed it. I think that um, that's just the kind of um, I wish that storytelling would get bigger and bigger and bigger and more mainstream and more mainstream and more mainstream, because I think every time a person goes to a storytelling show that's never been, they love it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They really do. They love it. They go, I didn't even think this is something that I'd enjoy. But there's
Yeah.
real connection to be made in storytelling for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my goal. That's why
Yeah.
I try to like coach like future producers, people who are
Yeah.
just interested in having their own show, because I think the more platforms there are, the more people are going to learn that it's a thing and be like, oh, this is cool. And maybe
Yeah.
you want to tell a story or not, maybe just attend to have a good time.
Awesome.
Um, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So as we get close, because I could keep talking, um, near the end, what would you leave audiences with, Brune? What would be a Bruneism when we're thinking about mental healthness or mental health or storytelling or whatever? What would you leave people with?
Oh God, I wish I had prepared that question. Um,
You've said lots of great things. So
I think, oh man, I think like with anxiety, relationships are so key. And
Mm,
that's what I'm personally struggling with right now, is
mhm.
that it's trying to see people. And some people don't even want to hang out. Like they're like, no, like this is too risky right now. Or,
Yeah.
but they are so, you know what? I just watched on Netflix the show Away about like with Hilary Swank, and it's about a mission to Mars.
Okay.
And I was so struck because I really related to those 5 people who are leaving for 3 years and going to live like very isolated. And so the point is, relationships are super important. And so like whatever you can do to feel more connected to your existing friends, maybe try to make some new friends.
Yeah.
And probably it will be hanging out on Zoom for a while before maybe you can meet in person.
Yeah.
And but also, you know, maybe try to find the right way of communicating. Sometimes a phone call feels more intimate to me than seeing the person on camera.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. I see that. Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful thought, that you don't have to sort of throw in the towel completely and say, you know, like you're saying a few minutes ago, oh, it's too risky. Because there's, you know, I'm not necessarily comfortable with expanding my bubble at this time, because
Yeah.
there's so part of it is anxiety. There's so much we don't know, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
It can be, okay, so if we can't do this, how about that?
Yeah.
And that we still can kind of keep those connections going. I think that's what's going to get us through this.
Yeah. My therapist has been telling me, you know, you can't, uh, the pandemic is the situation.
Right.
And you can't just be angry at the situation. You
Right.
have to deal with it. Sorry, but
Yep.
that's what it is.
Yep.
And so, if you want to find joy and you find that it's really hard to do the things that used to provide you with joy, you have to create other means, other ways. Yeah.
Beautiful. I want to leave it there then, about finding
Cool.
other ways to create joy. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we'll have to, and we'll hang out on Zoom that isn't being recorded next time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Happily.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Brune.
Lori.
Okay. Bye. Have a
Have a
great
great
day.
day. Bye.
That was Brune Smith. Wonderful. Relationships. I think that to me has been the biggest learning, is creating not only newer relationships through this pandemic, but also keeping relationships going in new ways. So finding joy, nurturing relationships, all very good advice from Brune. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And as always, be well.